All right, as people are jumping on, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see, can I get a thumbs up, Guinevere? Are you seeing my screen? Awesome, great. Well, to kick things off, good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Outdoor Recreation Knowledge Exchange. My name is Haley Sorg and I serve as the Extension Educator for the J. Kemmer Worth Institute at the University of Wyoming, and I will be your moderator for today's conversation. This webinar is a part of our Knowledge Exchange series designed to connect, inform, and support educators, business leaders, policymakers, nonprofits, land managers, recreation professionals, and outdoor enthusiasts, a big group of us coming together to have these conversations. Together, we explore key issues shaping outdoor recreation, tourism, stewardship, workforce, and innovation across our states. This series was developed through a collaborative effort between partners in Wyoming, Colorado, Montana, Utah, and California, reflecting a shared commitment across the West to strengthen outdoor recreation through knowledge sharing and partnerships. So a little bit more about our Knowledge Exchange series if you haven't joined us before. The purpose of this series is simple. It's to create a space where we can share knowledge, build relationships, and strengthen the field of outdoor recreation across our region. Today, our focus is on agritourism and outdoor recreation and the evolving intersections of these two industries. My colleague, Guinevere Nelson, who will be monitoring the Q&A as well as dropping links into the chat throughout our conversation, will be joining us. If you have any questions that you want to ask our panelists, please feel free to drop it either into the chat or into that Q&A section. We are excited to share that we had a lot of questions come in from those who have registered for this conversation today, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. We encourage you to connect with our panelists after our session today if you have any other questions for them. And we are also in the process of building out a resources page where we will try to get answers to any of those unanswered questions that we weren't able to get to today. We also want to invite you all to any of our upcoming webinars as well. So we have 3 more before the end of this year. We have 2 in November coming up. Those are our Outdoor Retail Outlook, where we will look at the outdoor recreation retail industry, as well as insights from state recreation offices. We have multiple outdoor recreation offices from multiple states joining us for that conversation. So if you're not registered for those webinars, make sure you do so. You can either follow this link or where you registered for this webinar as well. So a little bit about issue framing, about what we're going to be talking about today with agritourism and outdoor recreation. Agritourism and outdoor recreation are vital for our rural communities. They provide opportunities to diversify farm and ranch income, attract visitors, and highlight the cultural and natural heritage of a region. But like many other sectors, there are challenges. Many operations face limited staff and resources to manage both agriculture and tourism. Marketing and outreach can be difficult for small or family-run businesses, and both the outdoor recreation and the agritourism industries must navigate regulations, land management concerns, and challenging visitor trends. But despite these challenges, agritourism and outdoor recreation often thrive when partnerships form. Collaborations between farmers, ranchers, land managers, tourism organizations, and local communities can expand capacity, share resources, and create experiences that highlight the unique strengths of a place. As we hear from our great panelists today, I encourage you to keep 2 questions in mind. How can partnerships strengthen agritourism and outdoor recreation? And what becomes possible when these industries work together and would not be achievable alone? I am very excited to welcome a great panel for you all today, a lot of very broad experiences that we're bringing to the table from multiple different states. We are fortunate to have this outstanding group of panelists join us today, so thank you all for being here. We have Martha Solons, an Ag and Business Management and Food System Specialist from Colorado State University Extension. We have Caitlin Giles, the owner and manager of the historic TA Ranch. Dr. Elena Biggert, social scientist and research associate with the Institute for Tourism and Recreation Research. And we also have a Montana State University agritourism class joining us to share their student perspective on these issues that we're talking about, hosted by Dr. Shannon Arnold. Each of these panelists will have a few minutes to share their perspective, and then towards the end of the webinar, we will move into our Q&A discussion. But before we get started with our panelists, we do have an interactive poll question. We have a few of these scattered throughout our conversation today. So our first one is, what are you hoping to get out of this webinar? You can scan the QR code on the screen to answer this Menti question, or I know Guinevere should be dropping that link into the chat. So to welcome our first panelist for today's discussion, we have Martha Solons, an Ag and Business Management and Food Systems Specialist with Colorado State University Extension, where she supports smaller scale and specialty livestock and crop production businesses, agritourism, local foods, farm transition, on-farm food safety, and risk management. She has worked in agritourism research and outreach for 20 years, focusing on consumer motivations, producer needs, and community support to ensure agritourism is a successful business enterprise, especially in the rural West. Welcome, Martha.
So, well, thank you so much, Haley, and everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I think, the first thing that I wanted to talk about was, more our journey into agritourism for an extension professional, and then also for Colorado State University and its collaborators as well. And our study of agritourism really started with some of my extension partners who said, we have these producers with really viable enterprises, but we just feel like they don't have the business management expertise to be able to operate them in a way that it really aligns with their business, personal, family goals, and everything. And so we started putting together, and again, this is as a group of extension educators and researchers in the Department of Ag and Resource Economics. So none of this is ever done solo. I think agritourism, as Haley mentioned at the beginning, is such a collaborative field of study and education and outreach, because it's so multidisciplinary. And so, some of the first things that we did were to find out what we even had in the field for agritourism in Colorado. And it turns out, unsurprisingly, we have a lot. Our producers were offering a lot of really great opportunities for visitors, long haul visitors, folks who were, in their county or neighboring counties. And so a lot of those certainly revolved around outdoor recreation, as you can imagine. But we really started focusing on how we could help those producers better bring in visitors. They could, profile their businesses appropriately. So we started with this series of workshops. And, all of this we did by writing a variety of grants to fund this work. And so again, this is back a number of years ago. But then the next thing that we realized is we really didn't know why consumers our visitors, why they were coming to Colorado. And so we did a national consumer study on to understand why people were traveling to Colorado, what they were expecting, what kind of experiences they valued, and where in the state. So we did a little bit of segregation by geography. And we ended up lumping our consumers, or let's say grouping them into 5 different categories. And that started to help us drill into who was coming to Colorado and what they were looking for, because that really helps our producers build those marketing plans. And so, we really did focus on helping producers fine-tune their marketing approaches by understanding who these consumers were. And then our last iteration of study was a more recent grant that we completed, I would say about 4 or 5 years ago. And so due for more study at this point. But we looked at the West in particular. And the reason why we looked at the West is because it's really unique in terms of the amenities. And, one of the things that we found is that there is a lot of agritourism is based around natural amenities. And so this became very intriguing to us. And we found, there are these hot spots for agritourism. And so we looked more closely into what constitutes a hot spot versus a cold spot for agritourism. How can we leverage that information to enhance experiences and opportunities, experiences for consumers, opportunities for producers? And then, how can we help communities, really build and thrive on that. And so that was really our latest field of study then. And then just the other thing I'd mention is I am on the board of our Agritourism Association. So that gives me the opportunity to continue to address these issues with our businesses around the state. So it's an ever evolving field of study and then opportunity to work with our producers and their communities. So next slide, Haley, would be great. So I popped this in here, not to provide a vast overview, but merely to say, we in Colorado, we have defined agritourism really broadly, and we look at both what happens on the farm as well as off the farm. And so if you think of the context of outdoor recreation, actually a lot of our agritourism does relate to outdoor recreation, and a lot of it is on farms and ranches. And so that I think that wheel looks a little bit different for Colorado because our kind of our gateway agritourism a couple of decades ago really was fishing and hunting on private lands. And we found that producers kind of built on those businesses, which were really important, kind of key businesses for them to generate revenue or smooth revenue out in different seasons of the year. And so our definition of agritourism is not just what happens on that ag operation, but what might happen off of that operation that's, that brings consumers to the farm or ranch and, increases opportunities to sell additional experiences or products. And we can hang our hats on the fact that we are among the top 5 agritourism states in the country in terms of the number of operations that feature agritourism, the top 3 for value of sales. So that's pretty exciting. We know that there's a lot of opportunity there. The western part of our state has more of that activity than other areas. And so we see that change a little bit from ag census year to ag census year, but we know it's still a really important part. And the anchor businesses in that area really are related to outdoor recreation. If you look at, I'll show you a link in just a little bit, and you can go and look at some maps that show you indeed that's where some hotspots of agritourism are. And then the last point here to make is just that as you all can imagine, and our neighbors to the north share this as well, outdoor recreation is really important. And so we know that people come to Colorado for outdoor recreation. It's a great opportunity to hook them into maybe either participating in more recreational opportunities on a farm or a ranch, or finding something else to do on the day that they're not, river rafting or hiking or something like that. There's another really great outdoor or related activity for them to do on one of our farms or ranches. So those are the kinds of opportunities that we really try to build on. So next slide. So just to, I see Guinevere would like for me to wrap up here. So the first 2 bullets then refer to kind of, things that we've worked on in the past. If you go to that local food economics bullet point there, that will give you some of, actually it's a compendium of all of our publications over the last 20 years, best practices guides. I think those can be really useful for those of you who are looking at either studying building agritourism enterprises. The last 2 things I'd like to point to, though, are work that we have in progress. And one of those is that Colorado Agritourism Business Environment website. And that's a tool for producers to better understand, if they're interested in offering agritourism, what are those constraints, local zoning, building road constraints that might limit who they can have out to their operation and when. We found this is a huge constraint to our businesses. And then the last thing that we've been working on is looking at the costs in return to businesses, to production businesses. So in particular, we've been looking at lavender enterprises as well as apple production. But then you want to bring on agritourism. And so we've been building partial budgets into that really help our producers better understand, okay, I can generate revenues with this, but I can also, this is what it's going to cost me to address some regulatory concerns, like I can only have a certain number of people out to my operation at any one time, and also help them make investments that are, kind of help them balance risk and return so that they're not all in, but they can see where they can continue to invest and still generate those positive returns. So I know I'm out of time, but thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share this information with y'all.
Great. Thank you, Martha, for sharing those insights. I know that these timelines are short. We have a large panel today. So if, like we said, if you have any questions or would like to chat more with these panelists, please feel free to get a hold of them. They are a wealth of knowledge and some really great stuff. So we have another in-poll question for you all. And so if you want to scan that QR code or jump onto that link as well, we are wanting to know, what barriers are you encountering with your agritourism work? This is a very broad question, but would just like to know your input of, what are some of these challenges that you're facing within your work? So please feel free to fill that out as I introduce our next panelist. This is Caitlin Giles. She is the owner and manager of the historic TA Ranch, a third-generation family-owned and operated working dude ranch. Growing up on the ranch, Caitlin developed a passion for both preserving its Western heritage and expanding its offerings for guests. She has been instrumental in growing the ranch's services, from weddings and special events to sales avenues that showcase its authentic charm. Caitlin also strengthens community ties by organizing off-season events, including the annual Fire and Ice Festival each January, which is a really, really cool event. So excited to have you join us, Caitlin.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited to be here. So I just wanted to get a little into how our family ended up being in agricultural tourism. So basically what happened to our ranch is that as the third generation was coming up, our grandparents and parents did not want to feel us forced to join our business. And so went to school, had a completely different profession. And then when COVID hit, I sold my house and returned to the family ranch. And when the family kind of got back, we were realizing that our grandparents and our parents who had been going through issues with cancer, we had to make choices about what we were going to do with this property, because what the business that we were running was just not sustainable. And so we ended up, we've been in these multiple transition years of how do we fix our marketing program? How do we get these different types of businesses? You can switch to the next slide. And so first, I kind of want to give you guys an idea about how does our agricultural side of our business run. So we have 8,000 acres and we have about 250 head of cow-calf pairs. And in general, that's what we're primarily doing is our hay operations, our cattle operations. And then in addition to that, we are actually a National Historic Site. So next slide. This is the site of the Johnson County War. So if anybody knows anything about the Range War era in Wyoming and Montana, basically the Johnson County War was the cumulative effect. It ended in epoch in time, basically where cowboys versus cattle barons were fighting about who could and could not own cows in Wyoming. And so the image that you're seeing here is the barn, which actually has the bullet holes from that war in 1892. And in fact, kind of what you're looking at is this is an original homestead from around 1880 to 1901, where all of the buildings are intact. So when our family first came to the ranch, it was my grandma's dream to basically restore everything to close to original as she possibly could. That's what also kind of prompted us in this idea that we could turn we were doing historic tours and we were having friends and family stay over, and maybe we could start making some money doing it. So next slide. Right here, you guys are going to see a little bit of our lodging. So everything had a form and function on the ranch. So on the left is the ranch house, which was actually the first estate building that was on the ranch, has bullet holes. A guy accidentally shot his foot and died of gangrene later. And but it's really kind of cool because we've restored everything. And that's kind of a huge piece of our business is actually lodging, which I know a lot of people are inhibited by that because where our highest profit margin is in our venue and our lodging. The middle picture right there is really cool because that's one of, it's a you'll see it soon in Wyoming tourism. It's a highly photographed building. I know it doesn't seem like it, but you kind of see it everywhere. And that's actually a milk barn that we renovated and converted into guest housing. And then same thing with the conference, the granary, which is actually our business center and our conference center, which is another facet of our business, which is corporate retreats. Next slide. But the big thing that we've had to do to adapt our business is basically working on experiences. So one of the things that we've seen in tourism is changes in how millennials and younger like to travel. So boomers have money, but boomers, right, are looking at different kinds of things when they're trying to stay for lodge, right? They're primarily looking at lodging and accommodation. For millennial and younger, it's about the quality or the uniqueness of their experience. And so that's what we've had to focus on. Where we've found a niche in our market is actually training people who have a desire to create their own homestead. So that's kind of our niche is we are considered a living history museum with our historic side, but we also are kind of doing the same practices that they were doing in 1880 to 1901. So for example, we teach people how to fence. We teach people how to do haying operations. We have a moderate accommodations, but we can teach people how to kind of be a cowboy, right? And we do these big cattle pushes. We bring them in along with us on the ranch. One of the things that we've excelled in, next slide, is I know this sounds crazy, but goats, which is the future of, I hate goats. I hate them to my core. And then I got some of the most magical goats I've ever, they are incredible. And this is where what we were having to do with our all-inclusive stays was have filler time. And for us, like what we're doing is farm to table stuff. So we actually feed out pigs, we slaughter them for weddings. We make our own food because our family has a lot of food allergies. This was a passion of ours already that we were doing just for our family. And then all of a sudden it was just really nice to take some annoying children over to the goats and just have them be preoccupied for hours on end. And so that's kind of what formed this extension, right? Extension into the public or into that fit naturally with what we were already doing with our history tours is teaching people how to homestead, make their own food, and be sustainable. And of course, we absolutely had to do goat yoga because why not? But one variation of that, which is unique, is we actually do goat packing. So kind of during hunting season and we're camping ourselves, we actually pack out on goats. And so it was just a natural extension for us to actually put yoga mats on those goats and take them. And it's awesome because the thing about goats that you don't have with horses is that goats are so herd bound that wherever I go, my goats go. And I don't have to tie them up all the time. Like we can just literally put everything down on the ground. They graze. I literally like whistle to them and they run over and then we just pack out on them. And so those are just like some of the ways in which we've really created these unique experiences because I think the desire within the industry right now is people are just inundated with population density, right? They're always on their phones. They're constantly on social media. What we've been seeing on a trend is a return to it's traditional, away from modernity, don't want to be on their cell phones, want to have authentic experiences, something where they feel remote. And then that's where we've shined. On the next slide, so just like we were talking about with food, and how we create our own food and we do a lot of farm to table things, we have really focused on pushing locally sourced food in addition to what we offer for farm to table. So we currently actually are working on our branded beef program, and that's what we serve in our restaurant. We actually are so popular with our caterings that we actually had to shut down our public restaurant. And so that's what we do now is people actually can come and make their own food. So you can learn how to harvest honey, and because we have our own bees, you can make your own butter, you can make your own cheese, and then that evening we're gonna have a farm to table meal. And that's really kind of taken off for us because if you're not wanting, you have to think about what the cost barriers are and the type of experiences that you have. Yep, I'll wrap up really quick. So the cost that you have in your experiences. If you're doing horseback riding or animals, you have to think about insurance, you have to think about liability, you have to think about all these different things. The cost of horses in general have doubled, if not tripled. And so for us, the way that we've had to think about our venue is in two ways, right? Highest profit margin, and that leads us to the last slide, which is, well, venue, right? Venue and then low cost experiences. So dining is one of them, having facility and venue. The last thing I just wanted to say is that we've had to get creative because our issue is extending our season. And we wanted to do this with our community as well. And so one of the things that we've really pushed ourselves in being creative on is our Fire and Ice event, which is a Viking festival in January, where we do like a weightlifting competition. So anyways, it's kind of crazy because the first year that we hosted this event, we had 600 people. We had 10-degree weather and we still had 300 people show up. So it's kind of just been a unique thing that, we've done. So that's it. That's
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for sharing that. It is a really, really cool event. So if anybody is traveling down to Wyoming in January, make sure to check it out. So I'm excited to introduce our third panelist. So this is Dr. Elena Biggert. She is a social science specialist with expertise in researching and managing protected areas worldwide. At the Institute for Tourism and Recreation Research, she conducts applied studies on outdoor recreation, tourism, visitor experiences, interpretation, and park management. Her work emphasizes visitor use monitoring, socioeconomic analysis, and community collaboration. She also teaches and mentors students, preparing the next generation of leaders in tourism and natural resources management. Welcome, Elena.
Thank you so much, Haley. Wow, such great presentations, Martha and Caitlin. I was very impressed. So thank you so much for sharing. And I'm here to present today our study that we conducted, myself and my colleagues, Glenna Hartman and Dr. Melissa Weddell. You can see our team here on the slide at the very beginning of the study, agritourism study. And we're here at the Wild Horse Lavender Farm with Carissa, who is the owner of the farm, right at the beginning. So it was an amazing study where we learned a lot from farmers and ranchers across Montana. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do in the next 7 minutes that I have, I'm going to talk about the Institute for Tourism and Recreation Research very briefly, and then I will introduce our study. I wanted to share a little bit about the Institute because I think we're very unique, and I'm very proud to be working with the Institute for Tourism and Recreation Research. We were established 38 years ago at the University of Montana. We're funded by a portion of the revenues from the state lodging facility use tax. And our goal is to provide, to conduct objective research in tourism and recreation to support the industry for planning, marketing, policymaking, and management. We are overseen by the Tourism Advisory Council, and we collected a lot of data since 1987, and our data is available 24/7 on our website. I encourage you all to visit it. And here you can see our annual research cycle. Every fall, we have a call for proposals. Any stakeholder in the state of Montana can submit an idea, then we review it, Tourism Advisory Council and us approve it, and then we do the projects, and analyze, and provide final reports. So this is how this project came about. Next slide, please. And I also wanted to mention that we kind of have two different types of projects. We do ongoing research for many years. So we do quarterly non-resident and resident analysis where we intercept visitors at gas stations, rest areas, and airports year-round, and we ask their perspectives on tourism, recreation, spending. So really, really rich and insightful data. Dr. Melissa Weddell also participates in the annual Economic Impacts and Outlook seminar that travel throughout the state to share insights on tourism. We also do tourism and recreation monitoring, work with state parks, and do survey kits. Next slide, please. And here's an example. In addition to this regular work, ongoing work, we do those annual projects that I briefly discussed, how the cycle works. And so you can see here in 2023, we had this interest towards Montana agritourism and recreation. So this project was approved, and we had a little over a year to conduct that. And I also wanted to show you other projects that we're working on. So currently, I'm working on museum project, and Carter, who's here also today working in the outfitting industry, and many more. So I encourage you all to visit our website and explore more. Next slide, please. So I don't see it for some reason. So anyway, I'm not sure what happened here, but I don't see my slide. I don't see the slides.
Good.
But that's okay. So I'll just keep talking about it. So Marta already introduced the wheel that Dr. Lisa Chase came up with and her colleagues. So I have it here also on the slide. But for the study, we defined agritourism pretty broadly, according to that wheel that basically all farming related activities carried out in the agricultural setting for direct sales, education, entertainment and events, hospitality, and outdoor recreation. So I find this wheel really insightful. As you can see here, there are peripheral activities and core activities, depending if they happen on the farm or on the range or outside, and the degree of connection with agriculture. So next slide, please. So our purpose was to comprehensively understand the landscape of agritourism and have a deeper understanding of motivations, current offerings, obstacles, and agritourism changes in Montana in the last few years. So we started with 2 virtual listening sessions when we invited everyone to basically join us and submit their ideas, what would be interesting to understand in regards to agritourism. And so we had 2 parts of the study. We conducted interviews, and we also distributed a statewide survey to producers. Next slide, please. And for this study, I also wanted to mention that it built upon 2 other studies that ITRR conducted in 1997 and 2007, when we looked also at the landscape of agritourism. And it's interesting that in 1997, this word didn't even exist. So we didn't talk about agritourism. However, we asked farmers and ranchers to talk about their engagement with recreation business. And you can see here, of course, I'm not going to read all those numbers, but you can see here that only 5% of farmers and ranchers were somehow engaged in some form of agritourism and recreational business. And then 2007, a lot more, 63% of them. Next slide, please. So for this study, it actually was very special because we did both qualitative and quantitative. For the past 2 studies, it was just the survey. So we did 21 interviews with producers and experts. You can see the map of the counties that we talked, the experts from the counties that we talked to, and 177 survey responses with producers. And we asked about agritourism changes, motivations, benefits, barriers, their visitors, risks that they have, key lessons learned, their success, how they define the success, and their community involvement and support. And very briefly about findings. So we found a lot of really interesting things. So first of all, economic benefits. Of course, agritourism provides small and mid-sized farms, especially with additional income streams. It supports local economies, and it also generates that multiplier effect that benefits not just agritourism businesses, but other businesses in local area and services. Social impact. I was really impressed how many people were talking about social impact and how it actually strengthens those community connections. They talked about education opportunities for visitors, specifically about agriculture, the importance of preserving agricultural heritage. Next slide, please. Of course, challenges. They all talked about challenges and comparing those 2 studies, and now actually those challenges remain pretty similar here. Liability and insurance, high premiums and clear coverage requirements. That was a big theme across the interviews. Regulatory delays, zoning issues, permitting issues, lack of knowledge and business planning and operations, marketing, promotion, and definitely need for more educational support. So next slide, please. For community involvement, also a big highlight was here that agritourism operations build the stronger community connections. They see themselves as this hub for communities, and farms and ranches serve as shared community resources. Growth and future potential, a lot of key opportunities about coordinated marketing initiatives, new attractions such as farm-to-table dinners that Caitlin talked about, festivals and other events. And next slide, I just have a couple more. So Montana agritourism changes in the past 15 years. That was something that was really interesting to me personally. We certainly saw a lot of growth in the past decade. Agritourism became a lot more prevalent. All interviews talked about that. really growing public awareness and interest. Visitors seek this local food, local options, meaningful experiences, connecting them to local people in agriculture. New opportunities for producers, and definitely changing perceptions here. And I would like to, next slide, just very briefly talk about recommendations to sustain and expand agritourism. It is really important to address those key barriers, specifically about liability insurance, targeted education, and encourage community collaboration. In my final slide, I wanted to share the quote that I really love, one of the most powerful quotes that I heard from my interviewees. Food is such a healing and gathering item. It brings people together and it heals people. And so those kind of moments, I would say, are my biggest success when people are just so grateful for what we're doing, because it's not just super easy work. It's a lot of hard work. And so those, I'd say, are the biggest success moments when we get a customer who's as invested as we are in what we're doing. We see it every day. We do it every day. We've seen people's lives be changed and have their hearts live in a different place. So I thought it was really powerful. And with this, thank you so much for your attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elena. If any of you have not read their report, it is a really great report. I highly recommend taking a look at it or reaching out to Elena or any of her other colleagues to chat a little bit more about that. And so I'm excited to introduce our last kind of multiple panelists for this webinar today. We have a very special treat to have a lot of students joining us to showcase their perspective on agritourism and outdoor recreation. So I will let Dr. Shannon Arnold introduce her class a little bit more, but they will be sharing their insights from their work exploring agritourism opportunities, bringing a fresh perspective from the next generation of professionals in this field. So I will turn it on over to you, Shannon, to introduce your class and share a little bit more.
Perfect. Thank you all for having our class as part of this webinar today. So we're really excited to share this class right here is a undergraduate introduction to agritourism class. And these students are going to share kind of their perspectives of how they see agritourism and the outdoor industries affecting their lives, how they're seeing different trends within their classes, as well as their interest in different careers and internships. And we've actually got 5 slides. So each set of students is going to have a couple of minutes to talk about their particular question, and you can follow along with the slide as they talk. And so we're just going to have our students kind of move through as the questions move through. So the first question that we have the students answering is focused more on current trends and pressing topics that they are seeing in agritourism and outdoor industry, specifically in Montana. So I will let our first group get started.
Sweet, yeah. Looking at especially at current trends as far as pressing topics go.
Sorry.
I'm personally coming at this from a kind of a farm to table hospitality lens, as well as just as a cook in general. So one of those trends we definitely saw was kind of the sustainability and organic movement and practices. We're finding it's definitely a bit of a draw. People dining and purchasing, they kind of want to know where their food's coming from. And in my particular case, it's more or less concerned with the quality of the ingredients. Here on campus, here at MSU as well, we're kind of looking at that, I guess, trend on that end. The awareness and accessibility for students and how that might be a limiting factor. But yeah. Which we're kind of looking at that from more or less freshman exposure. How do we get them exposed to agritourism, especially through classes, especially for those that aren't necessarily in agricultural or food related degrees. Another one of the trends we're looking at there was the increases in services offered, especially around the Bozeman area. So we're going to have farm stays, farm to table movements. One of the prime examples that we saw, or as you guys can see there, that the Bodie farmers with their teepees, or MSU's very own Towns Harvest with the host, with the stand-in host events.
Yeah, and in that, like noticing on this point, how we have a farm that's off campus and then we have our own campus involvement. A great way to we thought hypothesize that we could reach students, especially those from degrees that aren't involved in agriculture or agrotourism, is what we call Catapalooza in Montana or MSU, but just freshman orientation week. And maybe because they have stands, having a little exposure there with potentially partnering if they have like a campus farm or agricultural program that would make it especially easy to get involved in that area, but just like partnering with them and then as people pass by through this Catapalooza, they would have like pamphlets with interesting events, and samples would be like the draw because people love food. But these samples could have, or these pamphlets would have like interesting events and opportunities and perhaps reach people who could potentially take extracurriculars to become more enlightened as to what this actually is. Because there's a lot of people who just have no idea what it is. So and then, yeah, maybe they would have course segments or guest speakers, and that would snowball from there. But that could be a good way to expose it. And also on more exposure, there's the food security aspect. In one of my classes, I learned about 33 by 33, which in Montana is a 33% of food consumed by the year 2033, which we could make a campus goal and like have that recognition of perhaps other agritourism and agricultural companies recognition. It would be recognized through the signage on the foods, and it would highlight the importance of agriculture for these students that attend these facilities and eat these meals on a regular basis, which could also help with brand recognition and just what agritourism, how involved it can be in the community in that way. And then we did find that one of the pressing topics, obviously, is urbanization and land development, which, you know, we are a college campus, affordable housing is a thing, and that can be an issue. Yeah, so I think we'll just end up there. We've got more people to speak, but yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, our next group of students is going to talk a little bit more in depth about their expectations for careers in agritourism and outdoor recreation industries.
All right, so as far as what we expect from careers within agritourism, as you might guess, competitive wages and salaries, that's kind of at the top of the list for us. It's one thing to be passionate about agritourism and enjoy the work, but at the same time, we still have to support ourselves and eventually support our families as we get older. Kind of along with that is the opportunity to move into a higher role. I think that's a really important factor to incentivize people in these or employee positions to really work hard if they have the opportunity to move into a more managerial role eventually. And then the next one would be outdoor work. I think it's an expectation that there's going to be a lot of outdoor work in agritourism. I think that's important to a lot of people.
Yeah, a couple other things we touched on. Obviously within ag tourism, there's going to be a lot of guided tours, pardon me, guided tours. So you're going to be interacting with all sorts of people. Just from personal experience, I had the joy of working in Jackson Hole. I consider that one of the ag tourism hubs of the West, at least. And you saw all kinds of people from all different kinds of states, different cultures, different backgrounds, people that have seen horses, people that have never seen a horse and were scared of horses. And getting to work for those people is definitely something you can expect and should expect in an agritourism career. And then obviously there's opportunities to expand and try new outreaches or new opportunities within agritourism. You know, it's a pretty young, I don't know, it's a pretty young idea, agritourism. And I think people could expect to work together to find different ways to have agritourism. Whether it be, like, it doesn't always have to be with animals, it doesn't always have to be U-Pit, you know, and never letting agritourism get boring, I guess. So always expanding on new ideas and stuff like that is very important in agritourism.
Yeah, and then for career expectations, I think it's super important that we don't become it's important we don't become stagnant with agritourism. I think it's always good to be changing because people do become stagnant and complacent. So want to try to avoid that. And then with the diverse opportunities, like personal experiences, I've never worked in hospitality type marketing and a little bit of guiding, but like the management aspects and everything, that's something I've never personally been involved in, but it's definitely a growing opportunity for a lot of people. And I think it's super important that we continue to look at that just for people that may come from a background like me or vice versa.
Okay. All right, thank you. Our next group of students is going to talk a little bit more about effective ways that potential employers or industry professionals could better connect with students.
So our number one point is putting a face to the business. For us, we felt like one thing that we can really struggle with is knowing who is running the business, who we would be working for, and really what that business stands for. And I think the idea of putting a face to the business and becoming more approachable would really help students and kids our age feel like they can reach out and look for potential job opportunities.
And then we also have reaching out to clubs such as like our Collegiate FFA club or any other ag clubs we have. Weekly emails as well are really helpful because we are constantly checking our emails, and college fairs such as our career fairs or our catapaloozas that we have.
And then social media, obviously social media is the new way that we're all connecting with each other. I feel like a lot of kids are looking towards social media to see what kind of jobs they're looking for. And I feel like just even like putting out there that your job is looking for something might spark some interest in some other kids. And then keeping in contact. Later, some people are going to talk about internships. I think keeping in contact with your with the kids that do your internships are a great way to retain some of these people that know what they're doing. And then academic advisors. One of the ways that a lot of us will look for help is with our academic advisors. I think reaching out to specific advisors in degrees that you're looking for people such as Dr. Arnold or other people in our department specifically are a great way to spread news about either your internships or job opportunities and can really help us look. And then our final point is career exploration opportunities. A lot of people nowadays are really wanting to find things that they are really, really passionate about. So giving people an opportunity to be able to see what it's like to do a day in what job they'd be working or a few days would really help. I think people see what it's like and then be able to decide whether that's something that they want to do or don't want to do. And then also that'd be a great way to keep people longer if they know that that's something that they're going to love doing. I feel like it'd be a great way to retain employees.
Awesome. Our next group of students is going to talk about how they locate internships and other learning opportunities that specifically align with their career goals.
So to get started, we wanted to discuss that students want internships, and not only do we want them, a lot of times we need them, at least one. So finding internships has proven to be difficult for a lot of students, but it doesn't have to be that way. And post internships through university career services, extension programs, and social media. Use of word of mouth at fairs, farmers markets, community events, Facebook groups, flyers around campus, career fairs. We just had one at Montana State. These are all great places to recruit students directly and just stressing the importance of we want to work for you and with you.
And then also keeping in mind compensation and support for your interns. Offering pay and housing makes internships more realistic for us and way more attractive. I know that when I was looking for an internship this summer, if they didn't have housing, especially in rural areas, it was almost immediately a no. And then of course pay, we're all broke college students, we all need money, so.
So almost all students at Montana State are required to have an internship for their major to graduate, and students can earn up to 8 credits, 1 credit per 45 hours of work, specifically at MSU. And students work with their advisor and their cooperator when they're completing their internship in order for them to stay accountable and on track. And this is just kind of an interesting tidbit because you might not see that if you're not directly connected to a student that is looking for an internship. And then we just also wanted to stress on being flexible with the school schedule and not only holding the students accountable, but you'll also need to be in contact with our advisors from our specific colleges, just for proof of the internship. And I guess just being clear about what skills the interns will gain. So event planning, marketing, hospitality or tourism side, the livestock care side of things, and yeah, just help students connect the internship to their long-term career goals.
Thank you. All right, our very last group of students here is going to talk a little bit about some of the barriers that hinder them from understanding and engagement with both agritourism and outdoor recreation industries.
Awesome. Well, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. One of our first points that we wanted to discuss was lack of understanding of the industry overall and what it provides to the community. I know it was mentioned a little bit earlier, but as a little introduction, I had the privilege of serving as a state FFA officer for the state of Montana. And one of my big goals this year and my team's goals is one of our big goals to promote agricultural literacy. I think that growing up, I'll use my mom as an example. She's originally from urban Buffalo, New York. So growing up, I mean, she thought that beef and milk were made in the grocery store. And as she's learned now, that's not the case. There's a lot more than that, but there are people that believe that. So I think that being able to provide internships that are friendly to everyone, regardless of their agricultural experience backgrounds, is really important. And I'll use another example of one of my friends who was majoring in kinesiology and she wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. But then as she started to learn about herself and explore opportunities specifically within agriculture, she ended up switching her major to pre-vet, which is similar to mine. And now she has an internship with the College of Ag here at MSU in Bozeman. I think that's a really cool story and a really cool example of someone that maybe originally wasn't going to do something in agriculture and think about their life and think about what mattered to them and what they want to learn more from. And then from there, decide to dive into agriculture feet first. So I think that was just a really cool story and example of how we can engage all students regardless of their background and initial knowledge.
Yeah, after that we thought about funding as a big boundary because most college students either work or get money from their parents. I work and I got just enough money to get myself by. So I find this to be a big issue. I also think seasonally there's a lot of conflicts with being in school. A lot of students have exams and classwork they need to get done. It kind of sets up some boundaries there as time management and allowing yourself to get into these opportunities.
Yeah, certainly. Moving on our third point, lack of guidance or coordination with public and private institutions. We think that oftentimes we're all busy college students. We probably all get 10 emails a day, all kinds of cool stuff. And definitely internships are something we should be taking advantage of. There's so many amazing things that can come from them. But we're thinking that from a student perspective, if you were to open an email, for example, and there was an internship opportunity, you open it up and it's a 20-page thing where you have to write like 5 essays. That can be a little bit disattractive from a student standpoint where maybe time is a barrier and things like that. Obviously for internships that require a bit more knowledge or a bit more investment, we can totally see how those would be appropriate. But specifically maybe for entry-level internships or something like that, I think in terms of even just structured, something that's easy to read, something that's appealing to students, that would make them say, ooh, this is interesting. How can I get involved? Who would I contact? And making it an easy process for students would definitely make internships more appealing, more popular, and therefore we can get as many students in these internships as possible so that everyone can be learning about agriculture and its importance.
Yeah, good points there. Next, I like to think about understanding roles or job opportunities within the industry.
Personally, for me, I find it a little difficult because I study business management. I'm not directly linked into the ag business. So I find it difficult to find these operations outside of jabs or where I am. And obviously this class came up last semester and it was a good way to branch into this industry. But I don't know, I think pursuing this industry without being directly in it some way previously makes it a little difficult. I know a lot of these students were talking about things like Catapalooza, and these are career fairs we do, which gives more opportunity to expand and maybe reach out to different people besides the ones that are directly in the ag business.
All right, moving into our last point, production resources that are needed depending on seasons and time of the year. I think with certain internships, it can make it a little challenging if an operation's seasonal. For example, a seasonal pumpkin patch that operates in the fall and that's it. Can sometimes make it a bit more competitive if there's a lot of students that are looking for internships and possibilities like that. I think that, I mean, not everyone can afford a big fancy greenhouse. That's totally reasonable. But I think being able to pair students with perhaps operations or see if there are operations specifically involved with agritourism, public outreach, interacting, teaching the community about agriculture that have the ability to be open year round can open more seats up for students regardless, again, if there's spring semester, fall semester, even over the summer, just to ensure that, again, students that want internships can get them, but that also that we're working with producers to see what affects them and how we can better connect students to producers, to the community, and create an environment where everyone can gain something out of it and that everyone can work together and learn lots.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shannon, and your class for joining us. It is so great to be able to have the student perspective, our future generations coming in to these industries and kind of what they're seeing and what they're looking for. So thank you. We also have one last interactive poll. I know we're coming up on the hour and some people are going to have to leave. We're going to try and squeeze in a question or two. But like I said before, we know that there's a lot of questions. Please feel free to reach out to these panelists. They are eager to connect with you and share their thoughts and their ideas. And we will also be facilitating some of these questions to them and getting them posted on our resources page as well. But we want to ask what resources or information has been most interesting or most helpful to you today to include that in this next Menti poll. And so I am going to stop sharing my screen and open it up. We had one question come through into our Q&A that I wanted to throw out into our panelists. So feel free anybody to jump in and if you have a thought about this. But this question is from Lisa Chase and she asked, how coordinated are efforts in your respective states to support agritourism and outdoor recreation? And do you see any barriers or conflicts between agritourism and outdoor recreation in your state?
I can just address it briefly. I think that coordination is really coming along thanks to folks like Guinevere who are, really kind of coalescing us around this issue more than we have been before. I mean, obviously, as I was saying earlier, we recognize how complementary the, areas are, but I think now we're seeing a lot more interest and ability to all work together. Agritourism just overlaps with so many other areas and outdoor rec provides a really great new set of partners for us to collaborate with. So I think it's coming.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Martha. See if none of our other panelists have a thought to that question, that's all right. I have another question to throw at you all before we start wrapping up this session for today. But what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities for some of those collaboration between farmers, ranchers, and outdoor recreation providers? This was a question that we got quite a few times from people joining us.
So the one thing for our town is that our town is in one of those corridors, those tourism corridors, where people are kind of going between the national parks, right? Between Mount Rushmore and to Yellowstone. And also it's the first time that you get to see the Rocky Mountains. So for the Midwest, I mean, it's the first chance that they get to see those kinds of landscapes. Sorry. And what we realize is, and what our town is trying to do is create a destination. And a destination means that it's this multifaceted, multi-view place, right? And so between outdoor recreation, farms, and ranches, yes, there is lifestyle, right? And lifestyle is being outdoors. And I think a lot of farmers and ranchers don't understand that when we're working outside, we are outdoors. And it's the idea of stewardship and conservation that goes hand in hand. And the reason that it's so important to take this multifaceted approach is because we want to be able to shape the kind of experience and the type of people that we attract to our destination. And it's not just a change between the generations or a change in America. It's the idea that we also have to understand that as people that are participating in tourism, it's our experience as well. And for our town, which is so small, a lot of the locals are very tourism averted. Like they don't like to see tourism in the town. What was very difficult about for the younger generation, my generation, to explain to the older generation is that we have to take control of our narrative. We have to take control of how tourism shapes in our area and these partnerships, because that is how we're going to be able to control the type of tourism that we see, the type of demographic that we attract. And it's going to be something that coincides with our lifestyle and what we want to be seeing. And I am also on the tourism board for our local town. For the first time in, I mean, we're talking multiple decades, we were able to pass an additional lodging tax, which we've never been able to do before. And that's because the narrative is so powerful. And we do that through our marketing and our media, right? Videography, these partnerships, these collaborations, talking to each other helps us kind of form and put it into words what the idea is and then see it to fruition.
And I just wanted to add that we heard a lot about the importance of those partnerships in our interviews, and partnerships between the industry like agritourism, also outdoor recreation, nonprofits, but also partnership among all the agritourism operations as well. So that was also mentioned multiple times, specifically for coordinated marketing efforts and learning opportunities. So I just wanted to stress that that was very, very important. One of the themes that emerged for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your insights to that. We do have a few people still listening in, so I'm going to throw one more question out there just because since we have a few people still listening and something that I wanted to know about. We've talked a little bit about trends and some of the insights and studies that you all have done and things that you've seen in your respective areas, but I just wanted to ask the specific question. What are some themes and trends that you're seeing within agritourism directly related to outdoor recreation, or what can we expect to see coming up in future years?
So for us, the thing that what I noticed in our town that really does not like to see a whole lot of tourism was how we were able to kind of get these lodging tax passed and things like that passed is the idea of events and not just festivals. Events are you have high impact for maybe 2 or 3 days, right? And you get to control the kind of impact that you have and you can control the seasonality of it. What that does for a town or what that does for your business is it gives you enough income or revenue in that time frame to kind of keep you going. And particularly in our town, if we could do one major event, like somebody do something, right, each month, then we could keep our downtown area closed. And so also what happens in the off season too is people have a hard time being able to travel. So tourism for us and destination tourism has changed to something that sometimes is a little bit more regional than we'd like to admit. And for us, it's trying to do these overnight stays, right? Because that's where we get our money from. That's where the highest profit margin is. So I think the trend really is for us has been focusing on curated experiences that speak specifically to a type of person and a type of thing. Your marketing becomes easier. Reaching out to your demographic becomes easier if you do a really curated experience.
And I would just say to kind of complement that, these smaller curated experiences are something that we're seeing more of in Colorado. And I think the larger ones are the ones that run up in our like urban adjacent counties in particular run up against zoning and, you know, planning department type issues that make it really difficult to have a large event and manage all those impacts, which are both positive and negative. So I think we're seeing more of those smaller, like the class mentioned, you know, farm to table events and things that really focus on local foods and getting people into an area to enjoy the natural amenities as well.
I just want to share that we asked about all the activities that farmers and ranchers currently conduct, and then their plans for the future. And we certainly heard a lot about those events and this, like looking at that wheel, outdoor recreation and entertainment. And some of them you could question, like, are they peripheral or are they core activities, right? But still, there are a lot of people who mentioned that, like, moving forward, this potentially is one of the ways for them to make more money. And also, this is something that we, as I said, we heard, like, I feel like this is where it's moving. So certainly events will be, I assume that they will be pretty popular in the future.
Thank you all. I love what you said there, Elena, that this is where things are moving towards. And I'm glad that we're having these conversations and seeing these correlations between these two industries and really how they complement each other in a lot of ways. And so to wrap up, I'm going to get over to our next closing slide here. I want to thank all of our panelists for being here today, for sharing your expertise, your insights, your experiences. We have a wealth of knowledge on the screen here today. And so I encourage any people listening in, please reach out to them. They have so much to share and so much more than we could fit into this hour, a little over an hour time slot. And thank you all for joining us in today's knowledge exchange. The recording of this webinar will be uploaded to the University of Wyoming Worth's website, where you registered for this webinar, hopefully next week sometime. So be on the lookout for that if you weren't able to make the whole thing or would like to share this with other people within your network. We also invite you to join us for our next couple sessions. Another little plug for this, we have 2 webinars coming up in November. We usually only have 1 a month, but next month we have 2. That is our outdoor retail outlook and then our look inside our state recreation offices. So there's going to be some great conversations, some great knowledge sharing as well. So please make sure you join us. Thank you again, and we look forward to continuing these conversations. So thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.